Back with us now on the Sunrise Morning Show is Stephen Howard from In Defense of Christians. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning, Andy. Good to be with you again.
It is good to have you again. And we have talked a lot about the dire situation in Lebanon, which was dire even before that Beirut explosion over the summer. And, you know, of course, the Patriarch of Lebanon, Cardinal Bashar Rai, has been an outspoken advocate for the people who are suffering because of not just an inept government, but basically a lack of a government at this point. And I want to talk about the state of the church in Lebanon today. So first of all, can you give us a sense of the history there?
Christianity itself in Lebanon goes back to Jesus Christ himself. The miracle at Cana took place in southern Lebanon. And furthermore, as I'm sure you're aware, throughout the Old Testament, we read of the Hebrew prophets referring to the cedars of Lebanon time and time again. So it's an ancient land that has been part of the Christian story since the very beginning, and really throughout the centuries, it's a land that has produced saints. It's a land that's produced martyrs, and really, if you just look throughout the ages, I mean, in particular, I think as it relates to Catholics, when we look at Lebanon, the story of the Maronites is one that resonates with everyone. So the Maronite Church is an Eastern Rite of the Roman Catholic Church. So although the liturgy and it has its own order of bishops, but it's completely in communion with the Holy Father, and it always has been from the very beginning of the faith. But this church is very special because it's an Eastern Rite of the Catholic Church that practices the liturgy in Syriac, which is a dialect of Aramaic, the language spoken by Jesus Christ himself. And so throughout the ages, because of the fact that there's been a native community of Catholics who've always been in communion with the Pope, Lebanon has served very much as a cornerstone for the Catholic Church's presence in the Middle East in general. And so even today, I mean, fast forwarding a couple thousand years, a very interesting history. But even today, that presence, that root, is why we advocate so strongly for the country. Because if you look at the Catholic Church in Lebanon today, or even just in the Middle East, where are the seminarians? Where are Arabic-speaking seminarians being trained? Right? It's going to be there. Where are Bibles in Arabic being printed? It's going to be there. Where is Christian television programming and music in the Arabic language going to be produced? It's there. Even when there were movements, when the Catholic Church was doing a lot of evangelism in the region, trying to evangelize and win converts for the faith, those efforts were strongly headquartered in Lebanon. So if this country does indeed collapse, that would be the collapse of a very crucial pillar of support for the church in the region.
Yeah, and a place that was specifically preserved in like the World War II era to be a haven for Christians specifically. How important is the church today in terms of things like healthcare and education and social services in the country?
It's absolutely critical, and in particular, the Catholic Church across the world is the leading provider of education, of healthcare, and Lebanon is a perfect example of that. So there are numerous K through 12 Catholic institutions. There are multiple universities, hospitals that the church runs, and the neat thing is, true to the character of our faith, they serve everyone. Lebanon is a very ethnically and religiously diverse country. It's the most ethnically and religiously diverse country in the Middle East. That's why St. John Paul II referred to it as a message of coexistence. And so these institutions, while they're administered by the church, they serve Lebanese of all religious sects, Christian and Muslim. And that is a message that we really do need to preserve. And so a lot of our work as of late, given the financial crisis the country is facing, the political crisis, has been really trying to really improve the U.S.'s relationship with civil society organizations in Lebanon, including Christian ones, because it's absolutely crucial that we support those institutions, because if they collapse, not only would a lot of Lebanese not be receiving social services, but the work that they've done to promote, I think, a healthy sense of shared nationality across religious lines would really hurt. And so we want to preserve that. We want to invest in the future of Lebanon and invest in the future of coexistence in Lebanon.
Stephen, do you know much about the state of vocations in Lebanon? Particularly, do we know if there are many young men who are answering the call to the priesthood?
I had a chance to go back in 2000. This would have been late 2017 in December, and I actually spoke at a seminary there that was filled with young men. And the thing to also consider is that because of persecution dating back to the Ottoman times, obviously we talk a lot about the Ottoman Empire's genocide against Christians. That persecution had a remarkable impact in Lebanon. That actually a lot of people began leaving. A lot of Christians in particular began leaving in the late 1800s. But we also could see the Lebanese Civil War between 1975 and 1990, as well as the conflict with Israel in the early 2000s, were all factors that have driven Lebanese out of Lebanon for decades now. The reality is that the majority of the world's Lebanese people do not live in Lebanon. Lebanon's a country of only 4 million people, and there's at least twice as many Lebanese and literally just Brazil. Not even, but the diaspora is all over the place. And so it's very much, while Lebanese are always rooted and connected to Lebanon, and especially the church plays a vital role in that, we have to look kind of globally. So the seminary there I spoke at was filled with young men, filled with vocations. And we actually here in Washington, D.C. also have a seminary with Maronite seminarians. And I'm friends with many of those guys. We're very close. But it is very much, it's an interesting dynamic when the church is in diaspora, because it's very much a global church.
Yeah.
And it's a situation where people are oftentimes going back and forth between the diaspora and the mainland. That not only applies to religious, but that's just a lot of normal Lebanese people. You'll find they live in the U.S., but they're going back frequently because nobody wants to lose the love of their homeland.
Well, that's fascinating to hear. Just one last question quickly, because we are already out of time. But, Cardinal Rye, who we started off the conversation mentioning, he's in his 80s now. So are there Catholic leaders in Lebanon whose voices need to be amplified here?
Well, absolutely. And we work with all the bishops in that country, and I would even point to the two bishops we have here in the U.S. that have been on your show, Bishop Gregory Mansour, Bishop Elias Zaidan. They play a very important role in leading the church. The U.S. connection, I think, is very important. And, because it is a global church, the role that the diaspora plays is very crucial. Just understanding multiple languages, multiple cultures, multiple systems of government. The Patriarch Rye's right-hand man is Bishop Peter Karam, who for many years was a priest in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
So given the global dynamic of the faith now and just the globalized nature of the world we live in, I think that it's important that, that we have so many priests and bishops who are familiar with multiple cultures and stuff. So the church is very blessed. The Holy Spirit has guided it for centuries. And so we know that the next generation of leaders is being prepared to take on the challenges that await us.
Well, thank God, because there are a lot of challenges for Lebanon in particular that we hear about so often with our segments with In Defense of Christians. InDefenseOfChristians.org is linked at sunrisemorningshow.com. Stephen Howard, thank you so much.